reconciliation is currently just table talk. I think that we should be moving more into reconciliation, because action is what's going to create change. You know, we can talk and talk and talk in circles, but we need action. We need concrete action.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to You Create's podcast, Many Different Birds, broadcasting on CJSW Radio, where we will hear authentic stories from special guests from all backgrounds and bridge the gap between non-Indigenous and Indigenous communities, with a special focus on the Canadian healthcare system. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy comprising the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney First Nations. The city of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3.
Today, we have special guests, Gerald, Ratt, and Norma Jeremick'ca Gresl from the Office of Indigenous Engagement at the University of Calgary. So, just a little bit about Gerald. He is a child of a survivor of Indian Residential School, Two-Spirit Woodland Cree, and is a member of the Lac La Ronge First Nation in northern Saskatchewan, located in Treaty 6 territory. His traditional name is Asuru, which translates to warrior. His cultural identity is his strength. Gerald holds a Bachelor of Arts in Indigenous Studies from the University of Saskatchewan and a Master of Arts in Educational Leadership and Management from the Royal Roads University. Gerald currently works as a specialist Indigenous intercultural initiatives with the Office of Indigenous Engagement at the University of Calgary and has spent 17 years working in the areas of justice, child and youth care, youth leadership, student services, and education.
Gerald is dedicated to working towards reconciliation in education for students, staff, and faculty through meaningful relationships, cultural humility, and achieving cultural safety. He has lived and worked in Mexico, Ukraine, and Peru. As a lifelong learner, he continues to open himself up to new experiences, knowledge, and challenges for self-improvement.
Norma is Chinsu Dene Tichon from Wati Northwest Territories. Norma holds a Master of Arts in Leadership degree from the Royal Roads University. Norma joined the Office on Indigenous Engagement in May of this year. Norma's position is the Manager, Community Engagement and Program Development. Norma is very passionate about working with Indigenous peoples to hear her relatives succeed in employment, training, and education. Norma has dedicated 23 years of her career working with Indigenous peoples in various capacities.
So thank you so much for joining us today. And we see the little hands up in the air right now. But before we start, is there anything that you would like to add that we missed while introducing you?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for the invitation to be a part of such a dynamic opportunity to talk a little bit about what we do at the Office of Indigenous Engagement and, other pieces, especially around truth and reconciliation and cultural safety is such a passion for me within higher education. But I want to introduce myself in my first language, Tansigwa Nichiwaganak, Medagisagao, Tapwi Madasin, Gerald Nusuthigasun, Mr. Hasagayagan Uchinida. My income tax name is Gerald Ratt. As you know, my traditional Blackfoot name is Asuru. Land, place, and culture are significant to who I am, and in situating myself in this way is to honor cultural protocol of introduction, to acknowledge where my strength comes from, and to resist pan-Indigenism. Often, people assume that all Indigenous peoples are the same, which is in fact not true. We may have similarities, but we have very unique differences. We have about 650 First Nations across what we now call Canada, such as the Cree, Blackfoot, Stoney, Dene, Anishinaabe, including the Métis and the Inuit peoples, speaking over 70 languages.
Must see, Gerald. Sin Norma say what the Northwest Territories at the Calgary not the day in Calgary University gihelagan ladi falya dun gihelata du nit la kwagitya hi gihelata giga ya gitsa tita nit la kwagitya it's saka tungili si gihelata sakani go helageda masi defo
Okay, yeah. Thank you guys so much. That was very nice. We haven't had anyone talk in their own traditional language and kind of share that with our listeners. So thank you guys so much. So my first question to start this recording off is, how long have you been with the Office of Indigenous Engagement at the University of Calgary? So whoever wants to go first.
Okay, well, I just joined the university a couple months ago in May, and the position that I'm in is manager for community outreach and program development, and I think it's a really needed position. It's unique because it's new, but the overall goal is for me to work with external partners, create new partnerships, also work with Indigenous nations in southern Alberta and maybe as far up as Edmonton, creating bridging programs or pathway programs or looking at new programs, which brings me back to the university where I'm networking with all the faculties and identifying what programs exist now with Indigenous influence or Indigenous content and creating new programs or modifying programs. So this is fairly new and I just joined. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm still learning as I'm going, but super excited to be here.
Yeah, I've been here now for about 1.5 years. I just want to acknowledge Norma for being part of our overall team at the Office of Indigenous Engagement. And I want to give a shout out to the other team members in our office because we have such a small and mighty team with a big task ahead of us in terms of supporting and doing what we can to help different units and faculties move with the recommendations of our Indigenous strategy forward. My role is the Indigenous Intercultural Initiative Specialist here at the Office of Indigenous Engagement, but I see my role as Oskapios. In my language, Oskapios means helper. So this is my traditional role. Not only in my own community or the external community from the University of Calgary, but also here in the campus community. I really think Oskapios has a much more spiritual commitment when it comes to supporting the campus community. The main role that I have on campus is building intercultural capacity with non-credit educational opportunities. I facilitate our anti-Indigenous racism workshop series and the 21 Things You May Not Know About the Indian Act. I will be working on some new initiatives coming up. One focuses on looking at allyship through an Indigenous lens and what it means to being a good relative. And the other focuses on Indigi, queer, and Two-Spirit peoples.
I feel like the last one that you mentioned is something that not a lot of people talk about, and that's something that's very new to me too. Like, just hearing the initiative, I think that's a really good initiative. Like, to bring a lot of parties on campus together on one type of strategy in a way. And I know you talked about the Indigenous strategy. Are you able to share with our listeners and share a little bit more about what is the Indigenous strategy? Where did this kind of come from, and where and why did you see that this was needed on campus?
So based on the knowledge that I have about the Indigenous strategy, taa'poh'to'p, which is a Blackfoot word that was gifted to the institution by Elder Andy Blackwater, the word translates in English to a place to rejuvenate and re-energize while on a journey. And I think that's really significant because we're all on this path, we're all on this journey, and this is a space and a place for students to come to receive their credentials, and it is our responsibility as an institution to ensure that we are doing what we can to support and empower all students who come to our campus, and to ensure that they receive the knowledge, not only the Western knowledge, but there's a great opportunity for other worldviews to be implemented through the institution, so that when students are out there in their careers, they have different perspectives and different ways of seeing and doing things. And I think that's the diversity that we should be celebrating. I know that the Indigenous strategy was a response to the Truth and Reconciliation report. So the Indigenous strategy was launched in 2017, and it's a strategy that will guide the University of Calgary on its path of transformation and communicate its commitment and responsibility for truth and reconciliation. This was passed by the Board of Governors. We all have a part in this commitment when it comes to the Indigenous strategy. And it was the Indigenous strategy that really attracted me to the university. The principles and the values of taa'poh'to'p, which include Indigenous ways of knowing, being, doing, and connecting, creating ethical space, but also walking a parallel path together in a good way, I think, is what really will guide us as a community when we want to achieve something like reconciliation in what we now call Canada.
Nice. And so for the Indigenous strategy, for the creation of it, who kind of worked on it together? Like, was there a lot of elders who came together? Was it faculty members? Was it like higher ups on campus? Like, who kind of created or started, I guess, the groundworks, the foundations of the strategy?
I think it was a very grassroots level formation in terms of creating a strategy that would guide the university in response to the 94 calls to action. So I know that there were many elders involved from all communities, from the Blackfoot Confederacy, Stoney Nakoda, Tsuut'ina, Métis Nation of Alberta, but also faculty members, students were involved, senior leadership was involved, the non-Indigenous community was involved. So there was a lot of consultation involved, but I know at the beginning there was ceremony involved. And we often start with ceremony because we want to do things in a good way. We want to invite our ancestors and Creator into the process so that we are ensuring that we are creating that ethical space to talk about sometimes some very difficult topics that might arise, because we are impacted by colonization. And when I say that, I'm talking about the institution of Indian residential schools, which really caused a fracture in our relationship with non-Indigenous peoples. And we lost trust in institutions. We lost trust in education. So I think this strategy is a beacon of light that will guide us to whatever reconciliation will look like. But that reconciliation is going to take some time, and it's not something that we can just rush into.
Yeah, I kind of see the strategy as kind of like a relationship builder in a way, to build trust, to build I guess practices that should have been done from the get-go, but it's a way of kind of understanding each person's perspective and putting it together and using that as a foundation, as groundwork to move forward. So I really applaud everyone who did the strategy and the fact that we're still continuing on with the strategy. One question I do have is, what kind of future kind of things do you see with that strategy? What kind of direction do you want to take that strategy in, I guess?
Well, from what I read with the strategy when I first came on board, that's the reason why I came on board as well, was I really embraced the principles the elders had used to create the strategy, looking at the symbols and what it represents. And I think, like you said, this is the foundation. This is what we're working off of, and it's going to be a continuous journey. It's not something that is going to have an end game. I think it's just going to continue on, and hopefully this is a start for us here with this podcast, getting that word out there that yes, we do have the Office of Indigenous Engagement. We do have an Indigenous strategy at the University of Calgary. Our hope is that you take your time to read that and understand that and ask questions. That's how we're going to grow. And eventually, hopefully 5, 10, 20 years from now, the university will be more inclusive. And when I say inclusive, not just Indigenous, but inclusive of all nations and all languages, and, having that learning environment, that opportunity for all to engage together and to learn each other's nations and languages and customs and cultures. There's so many of us, right? Yeah. And I think this is just it's a stepping stone that I really thank the elders for creating this, not just the elders, but everybody that played a part in this, because it was much needed. And I'm glad that it's here now.
Yeah. And I just want to add to the importance of the spirit itself of the strategy. This is a living document. It's not something that has no meaning to it. So the elders really emphasize that this strategy, taa'poh'to'p, has a spirit, and that we honor that spirit. Every 4 years, we have a responsibility as an institution to come back to the community, to hear from the community, to talk about the accomplishments that we have made, but also to offer insights into what are we missing, what are we not doing, what direction do we need to go. So this is, like Norma said, an ongoing process that will be lifelong. And every 4 years, we come to community to hear from community and to take what we heard from the community and use that to make sure that we are on the right journey towards transformation.
Yeah. So it's almost like taking a reflective approach.
A renewal.
Every 4 years or so. Yeah.
I agree. That it is an ongoing process, as a stepping stone to something. And I know you said also how the strategy is like a beacon of light. And I was wondering, you've mentioned some works you've been doing around, but if you could elaborate on what work has the Office of Indigenous Engagement been doing around the campus, more specifically?
So my role is also fairly new. I'm the first to kind of kickstart this position of intercultural capacity building and going in that direction. And also with Norma's position, that is a new position too, and that position is very significant in terms of her role in the community, because we have to ensure that we have that external relationship with community, because we want to ensure that future students are attracted to the University of Calgary, and this is kind of what we're doing. So not only the intercultural capacity pieces, but we have multiple subcommittees that support us in the direction of the strategy. We have 27 recommendations in the strategy, and I would really encourage listeners to search the Office of Indigenous Engagement at University of Calgary, and here you can find our PDF on the Indigenous strategy, but also resources that we continue to build on. I'm a part of the Elders and Indigenous Lecture Knowledge Series, and that takes place this fall and winter semester, where we engage with elders' teachings and also different scholars from across the country, that we host those webinars just to increase the knowledge that we have with Indigenous peoples across the country, and just really focusing in on the importance of intercultural capacity and bringing those different perspectives and worldviews into the minds of young people.
I think it's really important. You said like webinars and connecting people. I think it's important to even connect people outside of Canada, because there's Indigenous communities, not just in Canada, they're worldwide. Mm-hmm. And each, I guess, group has, or community has their own knowledge, their own ways of doing and being. And I think it's really important to find similarities in that, differences in that. Worldviews are aligned in so many different cultures, but the way that they're expressed can be different. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really cool to connect not just communities just across Canada, but I think across the world, because that's how we can truly open up those conversations and challenge, institutions, challenge policymakers, and that's where we get like the groundwork going.
Yes, and we also give away $50,000 annually to student, staff, or faculty who want to create a new initiative on campus. Right now we have a student-led program to create an Indigenous campus map for the community. So it's coming back to traditional names of location and places in Calgary, but also here on the campus itself.
Yeah. That's nice to hear.
Yeah.
And I also noticed you introduced the term intercultural capacity. If you could let the listeners know what that means.
So we really want to focus on ethical space and creating ethical space. So ethical space is a term coined by Willie Ermine on an article that I read. But Willie Ermine was also a part of one of our webinars for our lecture series. But to create ethical space or shared space is created for a safe discussion by bringing in different perspectives and different worldviews, and that there isn't a system of hierarchy, that there is a value to each perspective and worldview that is brought forward. So creating intercultural capacity is really challenging Western perspectives, and to make room for other perspectives that are just as valuable. And I think the more that we can embed different knowledges in our systems, I think the stronger that we will be as an overall community. That one worldview is not superior to another worldview, and oftentimes we assume that one way is the only way, and that is not true. There is Indigenous perspectives that are older than this province, that are older than this country, that have sustained and supported the Indigenous peoples since time immemorial. So there's a lot that we can learn from the original peoples of these territories.
Yeah. We talked to a lot of guest speakers on our podcast. One thing that we've noticed is that we have a lot of similarities between our cultures. Like, I'm South Asian, I'm Punjabi, and when we talk, we realize that, whoa, we actually kind of believe in the same thing in a way, and it's just, you would never have that conversation on the regular, and it's just like you said, to open up conversations. No perspective is better than the other, and it's like, once we start thinking that, the opposite of that, it's like we're going back in time. And so we kind of have to step away from that and think everyone, the hierarchy mindset is very colonialized. It's very, I guess that's the way that capitalism works in a sense. And sometimes I don't know if capitalism is the best way to operate, but I agree. I don't think hierarchy should be the way policies or initiatives are kind of made. And
well, it's also who's at the table discussing these issues, right?
Yeah.
Is there a seat at the table for me? Is there a space at that table where people will understand my perspective? That's very hard to say, because I don't know that.
I think with intercultural capacity, the biggest thing is having the willingness to listen, which I feel like a lot of people, it's a very easy thing to do, but it's something that not a lot of people do, especially policymakers. And it's weird how policymakers, that's their job, is to listen. Yeah,
but like engaging, but listening engagingly.
Yeah,
not just listening, but proactive.
And there's many ways that we listen.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So we have to, the elders say we need to begin by listening with our hearts, and not many people know that concept of listening empathetically because they may not relate to the challenges and the struggles from the impacts of colonization because they have benefited from colonization itself. So that might not be relatable for some individuals, and that's very hard when they might feel threatened by other worldviews in terms of sharing wealth, sharing opportunity. So that might be threatening.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
And, with intercultural capacity building, competency, I know we'll talk about this later in the podcast, but competency can only go so far, right? So I don't think cultural competency has the impact for institutional transformation, and that's problematic.
Yeah, we'll get into it later on in the podcast. Yes.
Tune in.
Yeah.
But I know you guys both recently joined this campus, so I was wondering if you guys have worked around other campuses or other locations.
I have. So when I moved to Calgary, I joined Bull Valley College. Okay. So my role there was pretty much coordinating the Alberta, at the time we called it Alberta Aboriginal Construction Career Center. You'll probably remember that the Indigenous, Indian, Aboriginal, like we've gone through a variety of different names. Like it's like Canada will call us whatever they want. But just for clarification, if you are connecting or making relationships with an Indigenous person, it's always proper to ask them, how do you want me to refer to you as? So that's why I introduced myself as Linchon Dene, because I'm not from here. But when I joined Bull Valley College, I worked with vulnerable Indigenous population. My goal was to get them pretty much get into employment or training of some sort. And so I would provide safety training and job skills coaching. And shortly after, due to lack of funding, the program shut down. So I moved over to SAIT, and I was with SAIT Chinook Lodge, again working with Indigenous students, but in different capacities. So I was working with students on student retention, and that was very rewarding until COVID hit. And then COVID kind of, we had to learn to move to online, which was very difficult, and maintaining connections with students, I think, was one of the hardest. But I didn't really like working from home during COVID, so I kind of jumped ship and joined Trait Winston Success Training Society, which is another organization that works with Indigenous people, but the role was a little bit different. So I was managing the program, working with Indigenous to get them into pre-apprenticeship trades. And again, due to funding, I don't know why the government keeps shutting us down, we lost funding, so we had to close our doors in Calgary, and then I just joined university here. And again, doing a different role, but
do you want to connect University of Calgary to other institutions? For example, let's say University of Lethbridge. I know a lot of work is being done at the University of Alberta. Do you want to connect all these campuses, let's say just in Alberta, together to have maybe not one strategy, but a similar, approach, have a similar foundation? Is that something that you want to do or something you can do?
Absolutely. But when you say foundation, I'm wondering, are you referring to the Indigenous strategy we have here at the university? Well, my goal is, part of my role is the community outreach. So I do want to connect with all the First Nations communities in Southern Alberta and even Northern Alberta if I can. I would even love to expand that to Northwest Territories, which is home for me, and Yukon, and wherever I can go. I would like to build those relationships and also promote university in my travels, but also promoting the Indigenous intercultural capacity. How can we build relationships? How can we work together moving forward? How can we, because our goal is that we're working with our First Nations relatives, and Inuit and Métis. That's our goal. And so how can we help them, in the university capacity? And I want to promote that as much as I can.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to it in the future.
Best
of luck. So we'll shift some gears now. So I know on the podcast we talk a lot about holistic healing. Mental health is holistic, and I know we had an elder come on, and she said that she doesn't even like the word mental health. She just likes the word wellness. So for you, I wanted to ask, when I say the term mental health is holistic, what does that look like for you?
Well,
your experiences and everything.
Well, in our Indigenous worldview, I know I'm using the umbrella term Indigenous, so when I'm referring to Indigenous, I'm referring to First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. In our Cree worldview, we do not separate things, so I can understand where this elder is coming from. We see and understand the world as being interconnected and interrelated. For example, we can't just look at mental health without acknowledging the emotional, spiritual, and physical parts of our well-being. When we can understand the medicine wheel teachings of our personal well-being, the spiritual, emotional, physical, and mental are all important to our overall health and wellness. In my Cree language, Mithu Bimatsawin is a Cree word for the good life, and this describes when all aspects of life are at balance and harmony. So we strive to keep the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual in balance and harmony. So balance and harmony are important not only within ourselves, and we carry a medicine wheel to ensure that we hold that balance and harmony, but we also have responsibilities to our environment. And if we look at the climate crisis today, there's an extreme imbalance that's going on out there that we are responsible for. But first, I think we really need to take care of ourselves, and we need to look beyond just mental health, and we also need to normalize mental health. We also definitely need to normalize emotions in general, because oftentimes when we come into an institution, we're told to leave our emotions outside the door, but that's problematic because I'm a human being with emotions, and there's certain emotions that really create discomfort for other people. But I'm responsible for my own emotions, and I think emotions are so important. All emotions are important, but oftentimes we're told there are good emotions and there are bad emotions. There's bad emotions. So I think we have a long ways to go in terms of normalizing mental health and emotions, especially for men. We have toxic masculinity that is still prominent in our communities, and we're losing a lot of young men to suicide, perhaps, and drug use, because they do not know how to navigate certain emotions, because we've been taught growing up that showing a certain emotion really is an act of weakness. So being vulnerable, which I think is very courageous and brave, is met with toxic masculinity as a weakness. And I don't think that's something that we should be teaching our young men.
Yeah, completely agree with you. What about you, Norma? What does it mean when I say mental health is holistic?
I'm just adding to what Gerald said. When, I look at the holistic person. When we say holistic person, Gerald shared your emotions, your physical, your spiritual, your mental, but I also look at the social aspect of it. Where do you put yourself in society, and why do you put yourself there? Yeah. Are you in competition with somebody else, or are you in competition with yourself, right? So all those things come into play. And I think, like Gerald said, if I can repeat what he said, is balancing. Making sure that you find your balance, you harmonize yourself. That there are some older sayings the elders used to say, it's whatever that you focus the most on what can harm you at the end. So if you're too focused on your social status, or too focused on your physical status, or whatever it is, then you're imbalancing the other parts of you, which creates an imbalance, and that can lead to mental health, that can lead to other physical health or whatever, right? So those things, it's something that we need to remember. And we are all human. We all have emotions. We carry them differently. We deal with them differently. Just for personal practice, what I like to do, and you can do this yourself, is when you look at yourself in a mirror, what do you tell yourself, right? Are you giving yourself positive feedback to say, you're going to have a good day. You have a busy schedule, but you're going to get through that day. Just those positive notes to yourself will actually increase your whole being, right? You're going to want to wake up and walk out that door. You're going to have a clear mentality. You got your day set. But the minute you start feeding yourself negative or accepting negativity towards you or inviting negativity, I think it brings you down, and it just leads to disaster in very many different aspects of who you are.
I feel like I see that too. Like sometimes if I wake up and I'm like, oh, it's so ugly outside. It's like, oh, I'm so tired. I don't want to get out of bed. Those days are the days that I dread the most. I'm like, why is time moving so slow? But the days where, let's say I'm at work and I'm like, you know what? I'm having a good time. Time just flies by. So I really like how you said that. What do you say to yourself when you look in the mirror? Very true.
Positive affirmations. You're supposed to give that to yourself.
And I just want to say also, like what Norma is saying is like self-care is so key, that we need to take care of ourselves so we can take care of our community, right? And I also want to say that it's okay not to be okay.
Yes.
You know, we have to also normalize that, you know, it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be depressed, but don't dwell and sink with these emotions. You know, reach out to the community. We have elders, we have practitioners, we have support systems out there. And we really also need to normalize that it's okay to ask for help. Oftentimes we have so much pride that we tell ourselves, I got this, we can do this. Yes, we can do that ourselves to an extent, but we have a whole community of people out there who are willing to support and help and empower, that it's really important that we learn to reach out to, you know, our community
and use those supports.
I agree. I feel like pride and ego gets in the way of so much stuff just because you have that.
And social media is not helpful.
That one.
No, it's not. No.
And I also like how you said the balance, everything comes into a balance. And in terms of that, I wanted to know, in terms of like campus setting, could you elaborate on what this means and how it relates to spiritual wellness and well-being aspects?
I have an opportunity every day to light smudge, you know, and to begin my day with giving thanks just for another day, you know, an opportunity to cleanse my mind and my spirit and the work that I'm doing, because sometimes walking into a boardroom meeting, sometimes the setting is very uncomfortable, but there's also members in that room who are senior and who have different positions that are influenced by power. So sometimes that can be intimidating walking into a room. So I think it's really important to ground myself. But we're hoping to create more space around campus in terms of land-based practice and really helping people understand and build relationships to the land and the environment. You know, oftentimes we're stuck in the building or a classroom all day, but then when we take a walk on this beautiful land, you know, we have an opportunity to connect with our higher power, with the universe, and just to take a small moment and to reflect on who you are. And, you know, I think it's really important that we strive to connect to the earth.
Yeah, I feel like it makes you feel more present. I feel like as students, like I graduated from U of C, but I would still consider myself a student.
Definitely.
Like, I feel like I was on autopilot for 5 years. It's just on to the next class, next semester, next exam. You don't actually get time to like genuinely breathe
and live it.
And live in stress, live in confusion, to live in even sadness. I just felt like I didn't have time for that. Yeah. What I had time for was I need to open up my presentation, the PowerPoint, and I need to write down notes, because I don't have time to be feeling all these things. And I think it's so important that I feel like in campus settings, we need to remind our students and even our faculty members that we do need to just breathe. Simple thing, something that we do on a regular basis, but to properly actually breathe, I think is...
And take a walk.
No, honestly. We did like a smudging ceremony. We had like a naming ceremony for our podcast. And our elder who was on was Elder Carey from the Faculty of Social Work. So she did like a little smudge before she came onto the podcast. And I remember we were in the Faculty of Social Work's office in the new, what's that building?
No, the other one.
You know, the new one?
The Hunter's Lodge.
McKinney. And it was just very relaxing.
Yeah.
Like, I had a busy day that day. You know, we were really like, this is our first, like, you know, recording. Like, we have to be like serious. It's something that we're so new to. And I just remember sitting in the room and just feeling so like I don't have weight on my shoulders right now. Like, I just
dropped.
Yeah, like I can just live in the moment, and that's something
that's the power of traditional medicine.
Yeah, and that's something I think we don't do.
I know, and we were so honored to join it. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Right after it felt
really
so relaxing.
It was really nice. I really liked it. Yeah, so moving on to our next question.
Yes, so how do we ensure cultural safety and meaningful reconciliation in higher education for Indigenous students, staff, and faculty?
The meaning of cultural safety can best be explained as an environment that is spiritually, socially, emotionally, and physically safe. Specifically for Indigenous peoples, where there is no violation, threat, or dismissal of their worldview and identity, of who they are and what they need. For me to achieve cultural safety, one must move beyond cultural competency and into what is known as cultural humility, where one practices reflexivity and positions themselves on this journey and reflect inward on their personal values, biases, frames of reference, and ignorance. Individuals also need to analyze the position they can play to mitigate harm, such as racism. When individuals fully practice cultural humility, they assert advocacy for social justice and equitable change for marginalized communities who face power imbalances and barriers that isolate, marginalize, and oppress within institutions, which is held in place by institutional racism. This is also a practice where individuals recognize and challenge, like I said, that social structure and unequal power dynamics. And all of this creates overall cultural safety, especially for Indigenous student staff and faculty. That's what I'm focusing in on. But if we can come back to some traditional values, one of those traditional values within the 7 sacred teachings, but also within the Cree community, is humility. And humility is the practice that we are not above or below anything or anyone, you know, that we are in harmony and balance with one another and our environment. And, you know, we lost these traditional values. You know, they're very foundational, like respect, reciprocity, love. Very simple, but very challenging principles to live by.
Yeah. Like, I see it, like, as humans, we position ourselves above animals, above the environment, because we think we're superior than them. But I like how you said, like, we're not above, we're not less. We all have to live in harmony, which I don't think a lot of people use that in their own practices, because we're not really grown up.
It's the power imbalance. Sometimes power can be addictive, you know, especially when it comes to authority and ownership. You know, I have issues when it comes to those types of terms, because language is powerful, and I think we need to be careful how we use language.
Yeah.
I feel like it's the adrenaline that keeps that power thing going on.
It's also ego.
Yeah, that
ego,
too.
Pride, money.
Greed.
Yeah, greed is like, I think that humans operate on greed, which is kind of sad. That's why we don't see...
Well, money, right?
Yeah,
like,
we don't see...
Money has really... Capitalism has really created a lot of problems, you know? Just look at downtown Calgary. It's really unfortunate that, you know, because of capitalism, we now have something like poverty. We have addiction, you know? Traditionally, we were not homeless people, you know?
I feel like it's even worse for individuals in Ontario, for example, British Columbia, for example, that people are being forced to be, I guess, homeless, or their situations kind of lead them to that, because everything there is just way too expensive. Like, I was looking online and it was saying that just to survive in Alberta, we would have to be making approximately $40 an hour. And not a lot of people make that much.
Minimum wage is not that.
Yeah, and I don't know, that's just in Alberta. Imagine in Ontario, like it's very bad, and I feel like it's just the fact that people will make skyscrapers out of nowhere, and it's just, we need to have houses here, houses there. And where I live in Calgary too, that's what I've noticed. Everywhere you look, one patch of land, that is not land for, animals to like live in, or let's build a park. It's more so there's land to build a house. And I've seen that in my community where it's just so crowded now that it's like, it doesn't feel like a community. It just feels like it's like a simulation in a way, where it's just like things are just building on top of each other.
It just pops up.
Yeah. Honestly.
It's very true. It's very true. And it's actually quite sad.
It is,
because we're a community, but we don't support those who are vulnerable in our community. We can learn a lot from traditional practices, and we can actually learn a lot from the environment, such as, let's say, for example, buffalo. So when the buffalo will protect their most vulnerable, which are elderly and the young, when there's a surprise attack on a herd, And when we look at the Indigenous community, we didn't have more than what we needed. We lived a very sustainable lifestyle. When there was a communal hunt, everyone was fed. There wasn't anyone who had more than the other. And I think we really lost that practice as a community, and I look at the city of Calgary, and I'm not traditionally from here, but I don't feel a part of it. I live here, I work here, I play here, but I don't even know my neighbor. And, I think that's sometimes, an issue, because we are such communal people, but at the same time, we're also fearful of, people around us in terms of like, can I trust this person, etc. So, and just going back into like the increase of everything really is creating a lot of stress for people, and because of stress, it really creates physical impacts to our bodies in terms of health and wellness. And that's not really contributing to our overall health and wellness as a community.
Yeah. I guess everything comes back to harmony, balance, and it's more like a seesaw. One can't be up and down, it has to be in the middle. But Norma, I actually wanted to ask you, what does it mean for you in terms of culture safety, and how can we make policies and institutions to achieve this safety for students and staff?
I'm just thinking when you said policy, I'm like, okay, we're not policy makers. Yeah. It'd be hard to do. But just building off of Gerald there, when I think of cultural safety, I'm just going back to centuries and centuries ago about how Indigenous people survived. We had communal living. We all relied on each other, and that's how we sustained ourselves, right? And I'm just thinking in the campus university itself. And just this morning, I shared a little presentation with the young girls who are here from Northwest Territories. And I said, it's so neat to see you here, right? And I said, when you go home, you tell your friends and their friends they have to come to university because it's a fun place. And the reason I said that is because it can be fun, but we can make it fun only if we make it our own community. Yeah. So I think the university, and that's what I shared with everybody this morning, was we're all family, regardless of where we come from. We're in this space together. We're sharing this space. We're a family. So we need to build that connection. And just going back to intercultural capacity, we all come from different backgrounds, different teachings, different philosophies. But if we merge, we can coexist together, build each other up in different areas, teach each other different aspects of our culture and our languages and our ways of being, and that just builds that community. And I think that's what the university needs to focus on, is who are we as a community? What do the external people see when they talk about University of Calgary? Do they see a family unit there? Do they see it strong? Is it thriving? Is it all positive responses when we talk about the family at the university? And in regards to policy, from that community, I think when we all come together and dialogue, regardless of being a student or a faculty or even a staff member, we can create policies that is going to work for everybody.
Yes,
right?
definitely.
And I always think back when you say policy, it's just something that is guiding us.
Yeah.
And policies can always change.
Yeah.
And we, going back to the strategy is our foundation. We can build off that and then create new policies that will work for everybody. Because we don't want to isolate people and say, well, you fit here or you go there. Like we're past that stage. We're in this day and age where we're talking more about inclusivity, equality, and diversity. And I just think we all need to embrace it.
Yeah.
And I just want to add to this conversation is that I want to say that there are limited to no frameworks or policies for accomplishing cultural competency and or best methods for fully reaching cultural safety within higher education, especially for Indigenous peoples. Indigenous peoples, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples are significantly underrepresented in higher education, and racism still remains a barrier. I just completed a research study on achieving Indigenous cultural safety in higher education. So achieving cultural safety in higher education remains an unresolved issue. And, we need frameworks and we do need policies to ensure safety, especially in the classroom. Mm-hmm. And we need the Indigenous community involved in the consultation of policies. And we really need to live by the institutional values, because we can talk about respect, but which worldview are we acknowledging when we define what respect is and what it looks like?
I had this not racism, but it was like I was in the communities major, and I remember when I came to university, it was kind of like a culture shock to me, because a lot of students in my classrooms grew up playing sports. They participated in sports spaces throughout their life, and it's like, how do I tell them that I have never even learned hockey? I just learned how to skate, and that translated into hockey, I've never danced professionally. I did it for fun. So when professors and when individuals are talking about this stuff, I felt very left out. Yeah. Conversations I could not relate to you. Mm-hmm. I did not know what it felt like to be a professional hockey player, because no one in my family plays hockey. No one even plays sports. So it was very hard to feel. I did feel safe, but it was very hard to feel accepted in a way, belonged, included in that, I guess, classroom, because I just felt like I understand what you're saying. I'm going to take the information.
Maybe an outsider.
I did feel like an outsider. There were multiple times where I felt like this is, and I love the content, but I don't feel like I'm a part of the content. I don't feel like I understand the content. It was just, I was passively learning it rather than actively learning it. And I feel like a lot of students may feel like that, I haven't talked to many students about, I've only talked to my Canese friends, but as being a psychology major, for example, how do you feel? Do you feel left out of classrooms? And I feel like that's a conversation that personally I've never had. And I think that's a conversation that we should have, I think, with students. It's do they feel safe and accepted in the classrooms that they're in? But
also challenging the institution can be threatening to the student in terms of retaliation on their grades. Yeah. To possibly them leaving their program and falling through the cracks, because oftentimes when students challenge curriculum or professors or policies, they get the runaround. They exhaust the student on top of the student trying to achieve their credential and move on to a career, right? So oftentimes we have many students who do not utilize their voice because they don't want to receive a lower grade, or they don't want to be treated even more worse than they already are from the institution. So
I agree.
Yeah. So early on in the podcast, we said we will come back to culture competency. So I just wanted to ask, what is culture competency, and is it enough for transformative change?
Well, I'm going to say Cultural competency, like I said earlier, is very problematic. And many issues arise that promote a fixed and restricted view of culture and therefore does not consider one's own personal assumptions, biases, and attitudes towards those who are different. Cultural competency, it falls short of bringing equitable and transformational change in higher education, and it does not focus on self-examination of one's position, or it does not address power imbalances. Racism is, like I said earlier, a continuous barrier that Indigenous peoples face, but also Black and people of color who experience racism significantly in higher education and in the curriculum. And I just want to, look at history and remind people that racism is transported through settler colonialism and has been and remains a tool to disempower Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Colonial educational systems play a significant racist role in normalizing Western knowledge systems as superior and diminishing indigeneity as inferior, producing discrimination, oppression, and racism. So history definitely matters, and there have been frameworks that have been utilized across Turtle Island, which is now known as North America, such as the doctrine of discovery, and also Indian policy like the Indian Act, which was an aggressive force to attack the spirituality, the cultural identity, the language, and the culture of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples in what we now call Canada. So cultural competency, it does not create transformational change. We need to apply cultural humility and practice reflexivity. And reflexivity is important because you journey inward and you question, where do my values come from? Where does my bias come from? Where does my ignorance come from? And, that is important because we often say that Canada is not a racist country. In fact, we are a racist country, and we need to acknowledge that. And that's the first step in healing, is acknowledging that we are a racist country and that we have a lot of healing to do. So addressing intergenerational ignorance is very key.
Yeah. Do you think a lot of this education surrounding cultural competency, cultural humility, looking back into our own biases, when you said these words, it made me think, because I have a psychology minor, it made me think about the psych classes I took that made us kind of learn these topics here and there. And I'm thinking, it's funny how I've learned about this, but I actually haven't learned about it in contexts in my psych classes. Why not? I think psychology students are the perfect, approach, first stepping stone as a faculty to open up conversations, because students in that faculty understand these topics, and then let's say we start off at the psychology faculty. How can we make it so that each and every student in every faculty learns this? I feel like it's something that, as let's say an engineering student, do you even question these things? Do you even know what cultural...
Are we allowed to question these things? This is another important issue that's very problematic, is can I question this? Am I going to get a reprimand if I question, because I might come across as too challenging or too problematic within an institutional setting, which doesn't benefit me? So I'm always hesitant to how far I challenge a Western knowledge perspective.
Yeah, it just had a food for thought when you were saying that, because I was like, it would be so nicely, it can be nicely integrated into psychology classes, even if it's one little online course or something, or maybe it is a separate class. I think it would be really helpful, and it's something that maybe not just psych students take, that any student can take. So I did have a question for you. It's how can we as institutions, University of Calgary specifically, work on this to kind of ensure cultural safety without enforcing value systems, without enforcing biases, and without making someone feel if they were to speak out, they're going to get repercussions? It's a tough question.
Well, we definitely. I just want to quickly mention that when we talked a little bit about reconciliation in this podcast, but as a society, we often avoid the truth.
Oh yes.
And the truth hurts.
Yeah.
The truth is very challenging, and the truth is very hard to digest. And I think as we move forward as a collective, we really need to face these truths, and we really need to have space and time to reflect, because oftentimes we don't have moments of reflection because we're trained to be busy and always be busy. Or we distract ourselves with social media, or just, different types of addiction that, we don't want to spend any time in truth. So oftentimes when I think about reconciliation, since the launch in 2017, is everyone wants to jump to reconciliation, but this is truth and reconciliation. There's still a lot of truth that we need to sit with.
Yeah.
And that's not an easy thing to do. So the question you're asking is a very challenging question. And that comes back to cultural humility. Each individual is on their own personal journey, and it is up to them, and it is their responsibility to take that journey inward. Mm-hmm. Because oftentimes we're searching for ourselves. For example, I've lived in a few different countries because I was searching for myself in other areas of the world. But then I realized I needed to sit with myself to navigate inward, to understand my intergenerational trauma from the impact of colonialism and the legacy of the Indian residential schools. So did you have any thoughts on that big question, Norma?
That's a large question. But I think about when he asked that question, how can we all come together? And I thought right away it brought me to a sharing circle. That's our common practice. And I've used that when I did my master's. My capstone that's one of the Indigenous methodology that I used to create that space, that safe space, where everybody that came to the circle was given just basic instructions. This is what we're going to discuss. Feel free to voice what's on your heart, what's on your mind. Any question is not a wrong question, but that created that space where people can actually have a really good dialogue. Yeah. It wasn't just conversations, there was dialogues, there was teaching involved, there was deep listening, there was understanding, there was relationship building, there was that connection with our emotions as well as mentally. And, that space that we created, at the end, I realized people that came in, and like Gerald said, it's you yourself. You put yourself in that position. A lot of people didn't want to be in that position, but they, sometimes they feel forced. But what I saw at the end was there was rejuvenation. I could see that, wow, although I didn't want to be here, by participating, I have a different worldview. I've learned something, right? And so there's so many things that could be shared in that sharing space that I think maybe the university can use more. And it could be different faculties, and it could be different conversations or dialogues, but that is creating that space for them.
And I just want to say the importance again of ceremony, because Sean Wilson, in his book Research as Ceremony, he talks about how ceremony reduces the space between people and things. Mm-hmm. And as you both were explaining earlier about how the smudge ceremony impacted you with Elder Carrie Moore, it really creates a very safe, sacred space where we feel that we can share what's weighing heavy on our hearts, because we need to release this from our bodies, because it's toxic. If we don't have an outlet to release the things that we're carrying, whether it's shame, whether it's guilt, we need to learn to release that from our body.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing I was just reflecting on is that we're kind of sitting in a circle right now. And it's like I can see everyone can see me, and it's just so much more easier to communicate.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just something I just noticed while you were talking. Yeah.
I know that last question was a big question, and you guys both answered exceptionally. So another big question on top. What does reconciliation mean to both of you?
Truth and reconciliation.
Truth and reconciliation. Okay, truth to me is going back to the learning the real history. What happened? What happened to the First Nations, to the Inuit, to the Métis children in institutions, all the experiences. Even when I think back, I went to residential school. So I went to the latter part. So my experiences are far different than my parents' experience. But when I went to school, I was never taught about Canadian history. I learned about Germany. I learned about World War I. I learned about the Holocaust. Nothing about Canada. Nothing about Indigenous people in Canada. So I think that's where we need to go back and learn and promote that in schools as far, as early as preschool, kindergarten. Talk about who Canadians are, who the first people were, what was life like. Teach that. And then also, as they get older, teach about the residential school, the impacts of it, what happened. That way, the young children will have an understanding. This is the reality. And this is the reason why we are here today. That now we're trying to, maybe not say fix, but we're trying to help Canada correct what it did, right? And then reconciliation is the second part of it is building that connection, reconciling what was broken, bringing us all back together, but understanding the truth and then building that connection again. It's a long process because we've already talked about racism, we've talked about diversity that exists as a result of the experiences of our parents, our grandparents, their parents. There was such a big gap there that in this age group that Gerald and I are in, and our kids and their kids, they're still going to be learning and trying to rebuild that relationship. So to me, I think it's just, as an individual, give yourself time and space to learn the truth. And then once you feel comfortable that you know enough of the truth, that you can go out and start building those relationships and then start educating other people on the truth that you learned.
Yeah. Yeah. So for myself, reconciliation is currently just table talk. I think that we should be moving more into reconciliation, because action is what's going to create change. We can talk and talk and talk in circles, but we need action. We need concrete action. I'm not asking Canadians to apologize for their ancestors, but I'm asking Canadians to dismantle a system that was built for white people, at the cost of Indigenous people, at the cost of Black people, at the cost of people of color. Is that there is a system in place, many systems, racism, sexism, all of those systems need to be deconstructed, and we need to rebuild as a nation. Our treaties and our people go further back than 156 years is Canada. Yeah, so I know we just previously had our July 1st came around, but I am First Nation, so Nahi thou is how we refer to who we are. So my ancestors have been here. My ancestors have utilized these lands and territories since time immemorial. So I always ask Canadians, there's a system that has been built here that you benefit from that, is not just for the rest of us, and that this needs to be dismantled. And that comes with action. So enough with the table talk and apply some action here. You have a responsibility to challenge your government. You have a responsibility to challenge policies, that impact the environment, that impact marginalized communities. So we have responsibilities.
And I think we're lucky as Canadians that we have the opportunity to challenge our governments, because so many citizens in different countries can't even speak out at all. And so we're given the power that we can speak out, and that we need to be able to take that power and do something with it, you know? And I really like how you said reconciliation.
Yeah.
I think we've brought this up on our podcast multiple times, that we just keep talking about it, but honestly, what is the change? What tangible change is there? Yes, minor changes are big changes, but with the work that so many people have been doing, it's like, let me see a shift in maybe attitude, you know? And that's exactly like you said, stop the table talk, stop the circle conversations that happen again and again, but actually do something with those conversations. So thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah. And yeah, I agree. Action. So I know during our initial interviews, there was a word I think Gerald used.
Taa'poh'to'p?
Yes, that one. And it meant kinship, according. And I just wanted you to elaborate more on that.
Yeah, so taa'poh'to'p is a Cree natural law in which we traditionally live by. So taa'poh'to'p translates literally to kinship, with a much deeper meaning that we go beyond respecting nature to recognizing that all human beings are a part of it. So we're talking about the flyers, the four-legged, the swimmers. So we're talking more than just the human beings of the earth that we share with many species. So taa'poh'to'p is the Cree name for the guidelines that govern the relationship of one thing to another. These guidelines ensure all people respect one another and all of creation. To the Cree people, this is balance and harmony. Cree elders say that by following the teachings of taa'poh'to'p, individuals, communities, and societies are healthier. And this natural law has sustained us since time immemorial, before settler colonization. So taa'poh'to'p is about living and working with each other in a respectful and healthy way, how we are all connected and have responsibilities to those we share the world with. So we understand treaty. We understand treaty making. We've had treaties with our own environments. We've had treaty, for example, with the buffalo, and the University of Lethbridge is doing a phenomenal job with bringing awareness and knowledge with the buffalo treaty, because the buffalo have sustained the Plains people since time immemorial. You know, the buffalo gave not only food, shelter, tools, and clothing, but it offered its spirit to the people so that they could survive in these territories and lands. But when it came to the numbered treaties, the buffalo in the West were slaughtered and left to die. And it really created a vulnerability with the First Nations people. And this was a tactic from the Crown and the federal government to bring the First Nations people into the process of treaty making.
It's funny how Indigenous individuals weren't a part of it in the get-go, you know, when...
Definitely.
The treaty itself should be all parties considered, not just one party enforcing it on the other party, which is, it's funny how they operated. Not gonna, yeah.
It was strategic.
Yes, very.
Yeah. We can see how it follows a hierarchical, Western world, that process. So how can we incorporate, ceremonies, healing, cultural protocols into our educational courses, especially considering how colonialism has affected us all in different ways?
Heavy question.
Heavy question. I'm just thinking, I know I've been talking with faculty and different professors, and one of the things that the University of Calgary is lacking is Indigenous scholars.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I just propose, well, if we can get the Indigenous students in here, let's empower them. Let's provide supports to them so that they can succeed in their program of study. Mm-hmm. And then let's hire them. Let's retain them somehow. And then we can increase our Indigenous capacity. That way we can include Indigenous content in the programming. So say, for example, in any faculty, I know social work is doing a really good, phenomenal job with including Indigenous cultural and practices with their space. They have connections with other campuses that do include Indigenous content. But I'm also thinking other faculties that don't have that yet. How can we include that? How can we say faculty of law, for example? I'm not just picking anybody, but how can we include Indigenous law, natural law, like Gerald mentioned? How can we include that in their study? And how does that play? How can you make that a parallel program with the Western, right? Or even faculty of kinesiology, right? Or even faculty of medicine, Cummings School of Medicine. How can we include Indigenous medicine, right? And how can we make that, include the Indigenous medicine in the teaching, but also applying it, right? And then going to faculty of science, how can we study this, right? And so there's many different areas. I think it's just a matter of increasing our Indigenous capacity with Indigenous scholars. And for the time being, connect with us at Office of Indigenous Engagement.
Yeah. We actually did have a conversation with one of our speakers about, if we get Indigenous students in, let's say, in medicine, a lot of people will eventually end up dropping out, so there's no retention. But it's like we want to keep that retention so that they then can serve their own communities. They then can bring their own practices when talking to other people, as a doctor, you should be able to recognize signs, be able to adapt the way you talk to different patients. The way that I approach patient A is very different to the way that I will approach patient B. And I don't think a lot of, I don't know, but I don't think a lot of doctors with my own personal experience do that. They don't change their communication methods. It's very strict and very, what's that?
Guideline order.
Yeah, it's very guidelines, very particular in the way they do it. So I think that when retaining different people of different perspectives and cultural backgrounds, you know how to talk to individuals and how to get to them in different ways. So I really like how you mentioned that. And that is an issue that we did bring up, is that there's not a lot of Indigenous scholars. Just even looking at University of Calgary, there's only a select few. But when you compare it to different backgrounds, there's lists that just don't end, So I think that's a problem, not just maybe at UFC, but I think nationwide, Gerald, is there anything you'd like to add on to that?
Yes, I really think ceremonies, healing, elders, cultural protocol is very significant and very foundational, because it really creates the beginning of creating cultural safety.
Yeah.
I've said earlier, there's a significant underrepresentation of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples, students, staff, and faculty, and scholars, as Norma mentioned. We've been impacted by the legacy of Indian residential school. Because of the Indian Act, we were forbidden to speak our language. We were forbidden to express our spirituality. We were forbidden to express our identity. Our hair was cut. So there are many of us who are searching for our cultural identity, and we need to create more opportunity and more space within an institution like the University of Calgary, where students can begin to discover their own cultural identity, because we also have 60s scoop survivors who may be, searching for their community, searching for their families, searching for their identity. And I think education has a responsibility to revitalize Indigenous languages, revitalize cultural identity. So we really need to create cultural safety and to ensure cultural safety, because then this, I believe, will attract and retain Indigenous peoples. And we really need to make room for worldviews in the classroom, in curriculum, in the decisions that we're making. And we really need to take this serious. It's 2023, and, we can make institutional shifts very quickly if we have senior leadership who are willing take this as a priority and make it happen.
Yeah, I agree. Because it's like you have a place where you feel accepted. Like there's something of my culture that's
belonging. Yes.
Yeah, and I feel like whenever I see anyone from my culture, let's say if I go travel, I feel, I don't know, weirdly at home.
Yes.
And so I agree. Like even if he is a symbol or
you were talking about culture shock earlier,
yeah.
And I think that's, you know, even with the Indigenous community, when they come to campus, they have this experience of culture shock.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think we really need to create more of that sense of belonging and, you know, increasing the numbers of the Indigenous people on campus.
I agree. So last question to end off the podcast. It's a big one. Okay, so if you could leave the listeners with one point of learning or a highlight or anything, what would it be?
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
Are you listening?
Are you?
Pay attention. I'll start. An elder once told me in a teaching that I was sitting at. The elder was engaged in some traditional teachings, but the elder talked about a journey that we're all on. And she said the longest journey that one will take is from their head to their heart. And oftentimes people don't make it there because we're so in our head all the time. We lead through our mind. We don't know how to lead through our heart. And in my Cree language, misconception is a Cree word that means to journey to the center of yourself to find belonging. And it is my hope that listeners begin their own personal journeys from their mind to their spirit in reflexivity and join this movement of decolonization and transformational change. But I also really want to encourage people to think about positionality and to perhaps research a little bit about what this term positionality means. It refers to how differences in social positions and power shape identities and access in society. So in acknowledging positionality, we also acknowledge intersecting social locations and complex power dynamics. So my question for people out there is to reflect on what is your positionality and what is your role in truth and reconciliation?
Norma?
I feel like Gerald read my notes. Because I was just going to end it with a question to say, ask yourself, maybe look in the mirror and ask yourself, where do I fit in my journey on truth and reconciliation? And not only where do I fit in, but how can I move forward and provide positive impact? How can I impact others so that they begin their journey? So think of that, dwell on it. And masicho means thank you in my language.
Yes, thank you so much.
So thank you so much, Gerald and Norma, for joining us today and taking the time out of your busy schedules to share your knowledge and your thoughts and insights. I had a really good conversation today. And we really dived in deep into conversations and topics, which we didn't talk about on the podcast. So thank you so much.
Yeah, that was a good segue between every single topic we went through. So thank you again, Gerald and Norma. And we also want to thank CJSW, the Indigenous Global and Local Health Office, Grandmother's Lodge at the Faculty of Social Work, the UCreate team, and our editor, Atia, for helping us with this podcast.
And lastly, thank you to everyone who tuned in. And to listen to our full episodes, tune into Apple Music, Spotify, or CJSW.com with special guests and your two favorite hosts,
Arushi. That was my word.
And Harveen. So keep a lookout for our next episodes. And until then, make sure you go outside because the weather is really nice. Not right now, currently, but it's the summer, so get out and have fun.
And don't panic, make panic.
Thank you guys so much.